Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 9th Annual Online ADHD Awareness Expo. I am Linda Roggli, and I am thrilled to be invited back to be part of this expo. Thank you, Tara McGillicuddy. I appreciate that very much. I know you tuned in to hear about carb cravings. We're going to talk about carb cravings in just a minute, but I just want to tell you a few details about the expo before we get started. Number one, please take time to go visit the online exhibit hall. Sign up for the free virtual goodie bag. It's filled with surprise gifts from our ADHD Awareness Expo speakers and our sponsor. So we are thrilled to have you visit because it gives you even more opportunities. You can chat with each other. There's all kinds of cool stuff. Don't forget that there are expo sessions every single day during ADHD Awareness Month, and that's 31 days, the entire month of October. So stay tuned. Join us for that full lineup of great speakers and great information in tiny little bite-sized bites. That's interesting. Anyway, I am delighted to know many of you both in person and from online events like this one. But just in case we haven't met, let me just tell you a little bit about myself. I am a professional certified coach, and I work with women with ADHD who are 40 and better, as I like to call them. Sometimes we have 37 and 38 years old, sometimes 35. It's okay if you're not quite 40, it's fine. But there's something that happens with ADHD for women who are over 40 and in that range that I love to work with. So those are my peeps, guys, since I'm one of those people as well. We offer private and group coaching, and we also do retreats for women and couples. My husband joins me for the couples retreats with women for ADHD couples and ADHD women. I also offer retreats, and we just finished up our annual Sea Change retreat at the end of September, and there are retreats and workshops, weekend workshops, usually held here in North Carolina, but they're scheduled throughout the year. So you can check out my website to find out more about that. That's adddiva.net, or actually better yet, go to ADDiva Retreats. Adddiva.net is ADDIVA.net. I am the co-founder of the ADHD Women's Palooza and the ADHD Parents Palooza. They are free online conferences that attract thousands of women and parents, men as well, of course. We just finished up our very, very first ADHD Parents Palooza with Impact ADHD in August, and we're going to have another ADHD Women's Palooza coming up in February. So you can find all about that at our website, ADHDpalooza.com. You can also get there from my adddiva.net website. Don't worry if you can't spell Palooza. There's all kinds of variations that'll still get you there. I also wrote a book, and it's called Confessions of an AD Diva, Midlife in the Nonlinear Lane. I am proud to say that it was awarded first prize for women's issues in the Next Generation Indie Book Awards a couple of years ago. So you can find the book on Amazon. You can also, of course, find it on my website. I am the former vice president of ADA, which I really believe in giving back to the ADHD community. The ADA board of directors I served on for several years, and I am also continue to be the webinar chair. So there's another opportunity for education. One of our primary goals is education specifically for adults with ADHD. I host a local support group here in the Piedmont of North Carolina, which is where my office is. And yes, as I mentioned, I am a woman with ADHD and an AD diva, if you will. So I think I'm qualified to talk about today's subject. So let's get on with it. 3 ways to curb those ADHD-induced carb cravings. So first of all, why are they ADHD-induced? Why does our ADHD brain can I say that? Crave carbs? That's one of those things that's a little tongue twister, if you will. So most of you already know about ADHD and the neurotransmitter connections in our brain and how that's related to ADHD, that sometimes we don't make solid connections, or there's not enough of those connections. So neurotransmitters, there's dozens of them in our bodies and in our brains, but the 3 that we talk about most often with ADHD are serotonin, which is kind of that feel-good that feel-good neurotransmitter and often associated with depression, norepinephrine, and also dopamine. And today we're going to talk mostly about dopamine. It's a little less efficient, and it is kind of rising a little bit to the top of the ADHD hit parade, if you will. Dopamine's important in all human beings and all their brains, wherever it is found throughout the body. It gives us kind of a sense of well-being. Sometimes it's called the pleasure neurotransmitter because we get more of it when we do things that we like to do, like sex and shopping and lots of other things. So research shows that ADHD brains may have fewer D2 neurotransmitter receptors, which means that we just have less receptors for dopamine. So you can understand why our brains are a little deficient, because if we don't have enough places for them to connect, we might feel a little, I need more of that kind of stuff. So we naturally don't have enough dopamine, so that means we may need to get our dopamine fix externally instead of just kind of it's happening within the system of our bodies and our brains. So we actually have to think about getting some dopamine. Sometimes it's subconscious, but remember, this is a physiological issue. It's not just, I have no willpower, therefore I can't stop eating candy bars or Cheetos or whatever else that carb is that we are craving. It actually is biological. So it's nothing to beat yourself up about, but it is something that you can change and shift when you're aware of it. So there are lots of ways to get more dopamine on board. Some of them are good, some of them maybe not so good. Nicotine is a great way to get more dopamine. It activates dopamine in our brains, and it's been shown that ADHD folks tend to smoke cigarettes more frequently than there's a higher incidence for ADHD folks. Alcohol, certainly, even though alcohol is a depressant, and what we think about is we need a stimulant for ADHD brains, it actually helps increase dopamine in the brain. Drugs like cocaine and heroin also increase dopamine. You can understand now why there's a higher incidence of addiction among ADHD folks. And it's not just about drug addiction. It can be about shopping. It can be about gambling. It can be about sex. All of those things give us more dopamine. But interestingly enough, another thing that gives us a dopamine boost is sugar. Sucrose is what they call it when it gets into your bloodstream. So keep in mind that we all need sugar. Our bodies and our brains are actually functioning, either on sugar or on ketones, and so we need that. It's certainly important for our ADHD folks because we need to make sure our brains are working at optimal, productivity, if you will. Carbohydrates are the way we get sugar. It's the easiest way for it to get sugar. It gets to our brains and our organs and all that kind of good stuff. So unless you're mainlining sugar water, and that's what you get in an IV when they're rehydrating you, you need to either eat or drink those carbs to get them into your body and therefore into your bloodstream. So first of all, let's go back to the really basic stuff. What exactly are carbohydrates? And I don't know. I think I'm pretty smart, but I just didn't realize that I thought carbohydrates were the obvious things like cake and candy and donuts and soft drinks and lemonade and all that kind of good stuff. And fruit, so anything that's sweet is a carbohydrate, including fruit like apples, like cantaloupe, like watermelon, like berries, that kind of stuff. So this is fructose, which turns into sucrose in our body. Carbs also come from things that aren't sweet, however. Things like bread. And I know people say, oh yes, well I don't eat white bread, I eat whole grain bread. But whole grain bread breaks down to sucralose as well. I mean, it's not sucralose, sucrose. Sucralose is Splenda. Please don't mix those up. And Splenda is an artificial sweetener, and some people say I'll never do that, and some people say I use it all the time. I'm not in judgment about that today, but let's talk a little bit more about what carbohydrates are. Even vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower are labeled as carbohydrates, but the difference in them is, and in whole fruits like this, is that they also have fiber. So they break down a little slower to release the sucrose into our bloodstream, so it breaks down into sugar. So let's think about this again. Our ADHD brains crave sugar because we want more dopamine. Got it? And dopamine gets activated by sucrose. What happens then? So a lot of us eat a lot of sweets. We drink a lot of sodas, especially those with caffeine, because let's face it, caffeine is a stimulant, and that stimulates our brain so we feel like we can focus better and get things done, especially if we're not taking medication. And I just want to mention, if you are taking a stimulant, be careful of your caffeine intake, because that's that's double trouble, if you will, or double stimulants. Maybe it's not trouble. When we eat carbs, a lot of carbs especially, like just say we have a candy bar on an empty stomach, our body says, oh my gosh, there's sugar, sugar, sugar. That's great. So it's activating our dopamine and we're feeling better for a little while. But after a while, our body says, oh my gosh, there's way too much sugar in my bloodstream. I'm going to go out and I'm going to lower that level of blood sugar, which is how it gets to our brains and everything else. And insulin goes into action and starts going out there to neutralize them like a little ray gun. I mean, it doesn't really chomp up the sugar, but sometimes it stores it, sometimes it just neutralizes it, so forth. So insulin is the anti-blood sugar, right? And it's trying to do its best job to make sure our blood sugar levels stay stable. The problem is that sometimes insulin gets a little it's an overachiever, and it gobbles up so much because it says, oh, there's so much blood sugar, I need to send out lots of insulin. It gobbles up too much, and then our blood sugar level drops, and all of a sudden we feel a little shaky or crabby, or we can't focus as well as we had been previously when we had. So what makes sense to us? Oh, it's time to eat another candy bar, or it's time to eat something else. And more often than not, we like to eat something that's sweet. Not too many people crave broccoli and cauliflower, but if you do, but keep in mind that's not going to give you that instant up, and it's not going to take care of that shakiness like something sweet would, like, oh, I think I'll have a Coke or something like that. So remember that insulin's out there gobbling up or neutralizing our blood sugar. What happens is that when we're on this roller coaster, so we eat something that's sweet and we go, oh my gosh, my blood sugar's dropping, I need to eat something else. And then we go back, we eat something else, and we feel much better up here. And then all of a sudden our body says, too much, and the insulin goes into overdrive again. What happens is that that insulin, when you're on that roller coaster for a long time, years, for instance, because I certainly was, the insulin gets really tired. It's tried so hard to neutralize us, and it's been working overtime for so many years that it just kind of gives up the fight. And then we have something called insulin resistance, so that your insulin is not working as well, so your blood sugar is too high, and that's, when you take that fasting blood test and all that kind of stuff, that's when they can say that your blood sugar is too high, like over 100 or 115 or something like that. If your blood sugar is 200, it's way too high for your body to function well, and it's going to start hurting your body seriously. And that's when diabetes comes in. And we're not going to talk about diabetes, but we do know, you probably heard the scuttlebutt that, sugar causes inflammation, that can cause heart problems, all that kind of good stuff. So, all right, let's see. I kind of got ahead of my notes, to tell you the truth, so let's just do this. Oh, yeah, the other thing I want to mention about that is that sometimes we do gain weight when we're eating the carbs all the time, because it is that extra sucrose is being stored as fat. And it's, you'd think, well, if I eat fat, then I'm going to store fat. That's not necessarily it. Sugar can cause fat as well. Alrighty, so if we maintain our steady blood sugar level, our dopamine can stay pretty level instead of skyrocketing up and down. So that in itself makes us feel better. So what's the best way to cut those cravings? Which, by the way, remember, not a moral failing, not I don't have any willpower. It is a biological craving, and then we feed it thinking we're taking care of it, and then we get on this roller coaster. All right, so how do we stay away from those sugar surges, if you will? I promised 3 ways to get started today. Number 1 is eat more fat. And that doesn't sound like that's a good idea, right? Remember all this low-fat stuff that happened, 10 years, 20 years ago? Everybody's like low-fat because they thought if you eat fat, it will cause fat or high cholesterol, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, they found that that's not so true anymore, just like they've now realized that eggs, even though they have high cholesterol, don't cause high cholesterol because it doesn't get into your bloodstream. That's not how our bodies create cholesterol, is just by eating cholesterol. Well, it's the same thing with fat. When we eat fat, at least certain kinds of fat, it actually feeds the good part of our bodies. And yes, you can't do both. You can't keep eating sugar and do fats, but you can substitute the sugar for the fat. And what I found out is that if I'm really feeling like I had to get over the munchies first, but if I'm really thinking, I need something. If I eat a good fat instead of a bad fat, all that margarine and everything that we used to think was better than butter, not so much better than butter. Eat some fat. Now, I'm not saying just eat a big chunk of butter, but what I am saying is that full fat, regular butter, and I don't care whether it's, salted or unsalted, any of that kind of stuff, especially the brands like this, which are from grass-fed cows. can actually help curb those cravings. So use butter on your broccoli and cauliflower. Use butter on your green beans. Use butter on your steak, for Pete's sake, if you're going to do that. This is another one. Coconut oil has suddenly become in fashion, even though there's a little controversy about that as well. But even though it's a saturated, full fat kind of thing, it actually is pretty good. This is virgin coconut oil. And it's unrefined, which is the best kind of coconut oil to do. Eating olives. Olive oil is good for you. So where does olive oil come from? It comes from olives. So you can eat olives, and you can have those if you're feeling, oh my gosh, like I've got to have something. Nuts also do it. These are macadamia nuts, my favorite, at least this kind. And let me just tell you that nuts like these go bad quickly. They go rancid. So I store these in the refrigerator. They're fabulous. Some macadamia nuts I have never eaten. Ugh, I don't even like them. These are pretty fabulous. And they're also expensive. So you don't need to eat like the whole package, although certainly I've been known to eat whole packages of ice cream. You can also eat almonds. Almonds are really good, and those are relatively inexpensive. I happen to prefer pecans, and pecans aren't necessarily really healthy, but let me tell you that they're a lot healthier than me grabbing a cupcake, a lot healthier. So what was I going to say about that? I forgot what I was going to say. So let's talk about olive oil. There's olive oil. Avocado is pretty good too as well. So if you happen to like avocado, you can put that on your salad. And be careful about salad dressings, because if you read the label, many of them have sugar, and it is disguised as dextrose, or anything that ends with OSE is some form of sugar. So just be careful about that. And there actually are some newer salad dressings that work. And you can eat lettuce salad, for Pete's sake. I mean, you can eat romaine, all that kind of good stuff. Those are carbohydrates. The lettuce and the vegetables, not going to raise your blood sugar very much. All right, what else? So number one tip, eat fat. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it, right? Who would have thought that was healthy, for heaven's sake, 20 years ago? Never. All right, number two, skip snacking in between meals. I know that there was a whole movement a few years ago to eat small meals, and so that your blood sugar stays level, et cetera, and that may work for you. Let me just say, I should have said this at the outset, that anything I say today may or may not be appropriate for you. And the reason I say that is because our bodies are completely different. You may have more D2 receptors, or you may have fewer D2 receptors than I do, or somebody else in the situation, another ADHD person. It's like our ADHD. We're all little snowflakes, so we all have to figure this out for ourselves. I'm sharing some of the tips that work for me, although skipping snacks is kind of important because of what I mentioned before, because it's that roller coaster kind of piece. And so we want to let our insulin levels go down, not from a spike, but from eating fats or eating protein. Protein stays with you a long time. Remember, in your body, it first uses carbohydrates. It digests carbohydrates faster, especially simple carbohydrates like white bread and white rice and that kind of stuff. Digest those first, then protein lasts a little longer. Fats last the longest. So it makes you feel satisfied. It keeps you from being hungry. So skipping snacks will help keep you off of that roller coaster, because it will be able, and so if you spread your meals out, and I'm not suggesting you eat great huge meals, if you spread your meals out, in between, if you have to have something, at least have something like this instead of something that's sugary, because that'll start you off again. That's really the answer to skipping snacks, is eating more fat. So it keeps you satisfied, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the third tip is drinking more water. Ta-da! Plain old everyday water. This is not, I think I'll just have a glass of iced tea, which I love iced tea because it's got water in it, right? Yeah, but it also has caffeine. It has a bunch of tannins, all kinds of other things. Not that those things are necessarily bad, but you need to get your 8 ounces of water in, 8 glasses, which is 64 ounces of water. You need to get that in, not before you drink the iced tea, not necessarily before, but in addition to. So get this down, then have a glass of iced tea if you're still thirsty, which is probably not going to happen. Remember that you need to kind of drink your you need to eat your food, drink your water, and a lot of you remember the smoothie movement that happened about 20 years ago. People got really smart about that because smoothies then were probably healthy because they were full of wheatgrass and avocado sprouts and things that are actually kind of more like what cows would eat, right? So they were pretty healthy. And they were green, which is kind of gross. But the juice bars got really savvy to that because a lot of people said, well, I don't like smoothies. So they started making smoothies that we like. And whether you're ADHD or not, we are programmed to like sugar. And so they made strawberry smoothies with lots of sugar and lots of high fructose corn syrup, et cetera, et cetera. I checked on the Starbucks site. Their strawberry smoothie has 300 calories and it has 60 grams of sugar. 60 grams is a lot. 100 grams is reasonable for a day. I'm actually doing 30 grams of sugar a day or some form of sugar because I'm trying to do a lower carb diet. But that's using up almost all of my sugar allotment in just one drink. And how long is that going to last you? Because it's got so much sugar, it's going to push you way up here, and then you're 2 or 3 hours later, you're going to be down here again. So be very, very careful and check labels, and it's not just about calories in, calories out anymore. It's about what kind of foods you're eating, what kind of carbs you eat. Vegetables, of course, are great. I mentioned that orange juice and coffee and iced tea doesn't count towards your 64 ounces. So remember, our bodies are 70% water. Let's make sure that we maintain that. You don't want to be dehydrated. So let's recoup. Number one, high sugar is bad for your body. The way to get off the sugar roller coaster is to eat more fat, good fats. Stop snacking, drinking more water. Simple, right? But we tend to go overboard, so please don't try all of these at once. Just one of them. And the first one to try out is number one. Substitute some good fats. Eat more fat. You'll feel more full. You'll be able to not feel like, I've got to have something. Make sure these are available, and then you will actually be eating olives instead of perhaps reaching for a Snickers. Okay, thank you for watching my video. I appreciate it. This is Linda Roggli. You can find out more about my work at the AD Diva Network, which is ADDIVA.net. And remember, don't forget to stop by the Expo online virtual exhibit hall. You can get your goodie bag there, all that kind of good stuff. And don't forget to watch all the rest of the amazing speakers that we're having this month in the online expo. Again, take care and enjoy those fats.